So now we're back, and you may ask how long it's going to take until you get the right color. There's no exact thing. This is the reason that I didn't give you guys a recipe in the first place. This is about a technique. So you want to really look. You don't want it to be black. You want to have a nice brown color. You can see there you got a nice sear on the meat. And I'm going to place it right back down in the pan. If you get a little bit of black in the pan, you don't want it too dark. It's going to impart a bitter flavor on the meat, a bitter flavor on the sauce. Now we're going to sear the other side, get some good color there as well. And this is the dry heat cooking part of it, right? We're searing it in oil, we're searing it in a fat. It could be beef fat, it could be clarified butter. Right now we're doing it in vegetable oil, which is kind of traditional if you don't have the beef fat or for health reasons. But once we move past this, we're going to take the meat out, and the purpose of that is we're going to deglaze the pan. And when you do braising, you're going to deglaze with usually something that's acidic. Could be something like vinegar. It could be something like lemon juice. Obviously those flavors wouldn't be really appropriate for a pot roast today. So today we're using red wine, or sorry, not red wine, we're using tomato juice, but you could also use red wine. The one thing I will say about using wine is that when you deglaze with red wine, you need to reduce it. And a lot of recipes will tell you to reduce it by half. And the primary reason for that is you want to cook the alcohol out of it. I got a nice little browning in the pan here, and I'm going to deglaze. You want to cook the alcohol out because it has kind of a bitter flavor to it, okay? With the tomato juice, I don't really need to reduce it down too much. I'm not trying to cook out the alcohol. The reason I remove the meat is it gives me the chance to scrape off all this wonderful fond, F-O-N-D, that has flavor. And I'm using a stainless steel pan, so using something metal is not a problem. But if you're using an aluminum pan at home, something soft like a wooden spoon is great. If you don't have that, your high heat spatula in your toolkit works really, really well. Okay? So I've got the fond all scraped off. That's going to add a lot of nice flavor to the sauce. And we're going to place the meat back in now. And with braising, when we add it back in, we're now going to add a flavorful liquid. So I'm going to make it a beef stock. You guys all have beef base to work with. The key to braising is you only want to cover the meat about halfway. So here I have 2 cups of water. You're going to need to make the adjustment based on the size pan that you're using, because you only want to have that liquid come up halfway up the meat. You don't want to cover it. So for this size pan, I'm putting in about a cup. And for every cup of water, I'm going to put a teaspoon of base in there. I'm just going to stir that. You can dissolve it prior to this. I just think this is a little bit quicker to just add the water in. The water's going to come to a high temperature. So I'm going to stir the base in, making sure that I don't leave a chunk in here and that it's fully dissolved in this liquid. So we now have the seared meat, the tomato juice, and the beef stock. When you're cooking regularly, if you don't have something like beef base at your disposal, you can make your own beef stock, and or you could buy some beef stock already made at the store. Okay? So now we're ready. We've got our liquid in there. Now we're going to add our aromatics. So today I've chosen rosemary. You guys have sprigs of rosemary. Make sure that you wash this before you cook it, right? You always want to wash all of your produce, including your herbs. I'm going to get that down. I want the aromatics down in the liquid, not sitting up on top of the meat, because the meat's really what's infusing the flavor. And I'm going to put 1 piece of bay leaf in there. You don't necessarily have to put that in. And some other flavoring, whatever you like. If you like something like tarragon, or for me, I like to put marjoram in mine sometimes. A little bit of like almost sweet oregano. And now the water, or the liquid, is starting to come to a boil. I do not want to boil this. At this point, we are in the moist heat cooking method of the braising method. So you have 2 ways that you can braise. We can put this on the stove and cook it on low for a long period of time. My favorite method is just putting it in a low temperature oven. So we're going to start out around 300 degrees, and I'm going to bring that down probably to about 275 and let that continue to cook over a period of time. But before I put that in the oven, and it is going to go in the oven, I just wanted to talk briefly about the vegetables. I've chosen not to put the vegetables in just yet, but I do have them cut quite large because this is a hearty dish. You can cut them smaller. If you have a thinner piece of meat, you can cut them smaller. But you want to put the vegetables in at a time that's appropriate, because you want them to flavor the liquid, and you want them, if you're going to serve them with a meal, you want to cook them, but you don't want them to be absolute like mush that you're ready to make a puree out of. So I've chosen to cut the onions a little bit larger, so I have a nice hearty, rustic looking dish, as well as the carrots, which I cut a large bias and then split them because I had some pretty big carrots here. And then for those of you guys that are in Garmin-J, I have my tornade potatoes, which I traditionally would not do for a pot roast because you can see they're a little bit smaller than a lot of the other things. I would do this for a more elegant dish, but I want to utilize what we have. So normally I would take a potato and cut it in some pretty decent sized pieces. So if I had a 3-inch round potato, I would probably split it or possibly cut it into 4s. So we're going to add this in at a later time. So for now, we're going to stop here, and this is going to go in the oven, and about halfway through the cooking method of this, we're going to come back and add the vegetables.